Today is gentle yoga, and I really like to have kind of a theme for us to think about as we practice. So my theme for today is open-ended questions, and I want to just kind of explain this a little bit. I notice that I have a tendency to make judgments and criticisms in the form of questions. So what I do is I say to my daughter, did you have fun with your friends? Meaning that I've already made a judgment that fun would be something that she could have, right? It's not an open-ended question. The answer is a yes or no. Instead, I am trying to work on asking, what was it like with your friends? Or something along those lines. So for me, this is a practice of letting go of my expectations of what I think the answer will be, and just letting it be an open space there. And I want that for us as well in our yoga practice, to have an open space to feel our bodies, to breathe deeply, and to kind of have the opportunity to be between the black and the white. I even wore my black and white today because I actually love the yes or no questions. That feels really safe, but it leads me into criticism and judgment. So I want to stay in the middle. I want to find the middle way. So let's begin, as we always do, with our breath. Maybe a few deep breaths in through the nose and out the mouth. Feel free to stay seated for a while or lay right back on your back as soon as you'd like to. Once you feel slightly grounded with your breath, you might then choose to begin to relax on your back. If you feel really comfortable sitting in any position that works for you, to just slowly come into our practice this morning. And we begin by noticing what our breath feels like as it flows in and out of our nose. Which nostril is more open? How do the nasal passages feel? And what temperature is your breath? Is it quick or slow or somewhere in between? And where is it coming from? What part of your body? Just be with your breath for the next several breaths. Now that we've connected with our breath, let's follow it throughout the body, scanning over yourself, maybe starting at your head and slowly scanning down through the joints, the muscles, the bones. Just making notes again, kind of asking those open-ended questions. How does it feel? Rather than does it feel good or does it feel bad? Being open to just noticing and being open to finding strength today on your mat and balance through our practice. This is also an important place to just pause and remind yourself that you are important, that if something is hurting or tender or needs extra special care, that you will set aside that for yourself today. You won't do poses that hurt. Instead, you'll do nothing, simply breathing, or maybe relaxing a little deeper, or maybe an alternative if we can find one. Just take a few more deep breaths, moving back into the feeling of your breath. Maybe even noticing that slight pause between the inhale and the exhale. Taking just one more deep breath, maybe hold on to that breath on the inhale. And then opening the mouth and sighing it out. Letting it go as you begin to move your fingers, your wrists a little bit, maybe wiggling your toes, your ankle rolls. Good. And we will get started with our movement today. Take your time to step your feet onto the floor and gently rock your knees. You can keep your hands kind of floating up in the air, the elbows on the floor, just twisting the wrists gently, making sure we have plenty of fluid in these beautiful joints. Here's our first open-ended question. What is a good life? What is a good life? Just see what comes up for you as an answer today. Bringing those knees back to center, go ahead and draw them in toward your belly, in toward the chest. You can wrap your hands around the fronts of your shins. And we're going to keep rocking a little bit, maybe moving the knees. Just taking your time, just feeling into the back of the body. I want this to be a more gentle practice, so we'll just be slowing things down, taking our time to enjoy the stretch and the movement. Just wiggling your toes, maybe roll your ankles a little bit, and start to lift your feet up into the air, and then begin to just bend the knees one by one or together, keeping a little bit of movement in the knee joint. Feel free to make some circles in your knee joint. I make big circles with my toes. You can kind of feel that movement in the outer hips, just rolling through the knees. And of course, if rolling doesn't feel right, just stay in line, keeping the knees steady and straight. Eventually, we want to push the feet up in the air and flex and point those ankles. Maybe make some big circles with the ankle bone, the ankle joints. It's amazing how our ankles can move. And then I would love it if you could press up through the heels, curl those toes down as if you're pushing your feet up into the ceiling. Take your hands over the head, lay them down on the floor above the head, so that you get this full body stretch. Push out through the hip bones, the sit bones, and up through the heels. One more big breath. This looks kind of like a down dog on our back. And when you're ready, you'll just wrap the hands around the knees, around the shins, and squeeze. We're going to do that a few times. Inhaling, lifting the feet, arms go over. Exhaling, we draw ourselves in. Feel free to lift your head and shoulders toward your knees and round the back a little bit. That might not be a great idea if you have any kind of osteoporosis. You probably want to keep your back pretty flat on the floor. And just one more time, inhale and exhale. Good. And then holding the hands behind the legs, we're going to lift the feet back up and open them wide apart. You can keep moving in the ankles, just feeling the deep stretch across the inner legs. Feel free to rock a little bit here. See how that feels for your low back, just a gentle twisting. Nice deep breaths. And then begin to bend the knees with the knees still wide apart. This is a happy baby variation. You could grab hold in front of the shins, opening the knees wider apart. You could press your feet up, grab those ankles or the outside of your feet and draw the knees toward your armpits on the outside of your ribs. This is a really deep happy baby. One more big breath here. And then release the feet and let them float right down to the outer edges of your mat so your feet are wide apart. Pause as you let your low back settle. Your knees are bent and the feet are on the floor. And begin to rock your knees side to side in this wide knee twist. Spreading the arms out wider and wider beside you, maybe even upward a little bit to get a little extra stretch up the side of your ribs. Moving into that fascia there. Keep breathing. Here's our next open-ended question. Why does happiness come easily to some people but not to others? Why does happiness come easily to some people and not to others? I'm still just rocking my knees in a wide foot position. Let's go ahead and bring the knees back to center. I'm going to leave my arms out wide as I bring one ankle in front of the other thigh. So I'm moving into that figure 4 shape. Looks kind of like the number 4 with an ankle in front there, rolling the ankle a little bit. You can take your left hand to that left knee and just gently press it away. Hopefully your left ankle is in front of your right thigh. If not, you can switch them. Keep breathing. I like to breathe up into my ribs here. Very nice. And if you'd like, you can begin to pull those knees in toward your chest. I prefer to have my hand on my knee and my hand on my foot right in front of me there, just to help deepen this outer hip stretch. Some people like to slide the hands between the legs and grab hold of the thigh. I find that this is a little hard on my shoulders, so do what works best for you. And maybe rock a little bit. We're just starting to get down into the hip this morning. As always, every yoga practice is going to help open those hips. Feel free to lift the other leg up in the air and roll the ankle a few more times. If you'd like to keep going, you can go deeper and deeper, reaching up for the calf, the shin, lifting shoulders and head, drawing everything toward each other. But that's really only if you're feeling like really loose this morning and you want to get a little deeper. That's kind of for people who are overly flexible and they can't really feel the stretches. So let's take 2 more deep breaths. And then settling the foot on the floor. I'm going to keep my ankle crossed as I start to stretch out the leg that's on the mat. I'm sliding my foot along the length of my mat. My heel is kind of making a little mark as I drag it, push it forward, and then this other knee is going to open up a little bit. It doesn't feel great to me to keep my ankle over the thigh, so I like to readjust and place the sole of the foot to the inside of that long leg. Oh, I got a little pop there. And we're just going to breathe here. This is our tree on our back, supine tree pose. I like to reach up over my head and stretch. Push out through the heel, maybe point the toes. Couple of long, full breaths here. The arms can float down, the knee can come up, and maybe just rock that one knee a little bit side to side with the other leg long on the floor. Now I'm gonna start to lift the leg off the mat, but first I might want to slide my hands up under my low back. So my left knee is bent and my right leg starts to lift long up in the air, using the core, using the muscles of the quad until I can get that leg up as high as it feels good to me, rolling out the ankle a little bit, and then pulling that knee into my chest and pulling the other knee in as well. And this is kind of a reset before we do the other side. Just taking a few more breaths. Noticing how you feel. Here's our next open-ended question. Why do people laugh? And even though it's fun, thank you, Judy, for the answer, I think I'd like us to be able to just answer it in our head and just keep it in your heart today. Just see what comes up for you. And of course, if it's not interesting, don't worry about it. All right, I'm gonna let both of my feet come back to the floor, and I'm gonna bring the right ankle in front of that left thigh. So I'm in my figure 4 now with the other foot. And I might start to press gently on the knee, opening it a little. This just feels interesting in the hip and the low back here. Just a little bit of stretching. You can stay right here for several breaths. You don't have to keep going any further than this. Or you can start to Bring the knees in towards your chest, keeping the ankle crossed, maybe just holding onto the foot and the knee, rocking a little. Some people like to slide the hand around the thighs. Some people like to lift the foot. It's all good. You can keep going, walking the hand up. Just kind of knowing yourself is really important here. And let's just breathe and stretch. Start to think about where we're going from here. There have been studies done about thinking about movement and how that brain power actually helps to strengthen the movement and steady the nervous system. So we are gonna move toward our tree on the floor. So I'm gonna set the foot back down, kind of pushing my heel along the mat as I straighten out the long leg, keeping the ankle crossed. The right knee kind of goes wide, and sometimes it feels great to leave the ankle on the thigh. Sometimes it feels better to put the sole of the foot on the inside of that long leg. Feel free to flatten up the foot or point it, and add your arms as you breathe. Two deep breaths here. Go ahead and let your arms come back down to a comfortable position. Bringing the sole of the foot to the floor, bringing that bent knee up, rocking a little bit side to side. Start to think about sliding the hands up under the hips, palms down, just to help support the leg lift when we get there. Knee comes back to center, foot stays on the floor as we reach out through the heel of the long leg and gently, slowly engaging the core, lift that leg up as high as it feels good. Breathing and drawing the knee into the chest, sliding those hands out and pulling both knees in to rock side to side. Getting ready to move toward our butterfly. Bringing the feet back to the floor, soles of the feet touch, and the knees go wide apart. Feel free to stay really still and just breathe right into your low belly here, into the pelvis. Or you can rock your knees a little bit if that feels good. You can leave your arms down or maybe slide them behind your head so you feel like a double butterfly, elbows wide and knees wide apart. The simple question, how are you, is an open-ended question. Anything we can ask that doesn't have an immediate yes or no. That's what we want to think about today. All right, I'm gonna walk my feet back onto the floor, bring my knees up and scoot my hips over so I can roll over onto my side. Kind of getting arranged here so I can lie on my side. We're gonna do some work on our side here. First, just kind of get comfortable. The knees can be on kind of a 45-degree angle. Couple of deep breaths as you settle. And we'll begin by just drawing that top knee into the chest, giving it a little squeeze as we roll the ankle a little bit. See how that feels? Maybe lift the knee up slightly. I'm not going all the way up. I'm just kind of bringing the knee to the floor and then rolling it up. My bottom leg's doing quite a bit of work here to kind of keep me balanced. And then the next time I lift the leg up, I want to start to straighten it out, and it could be on a long diagonal. You could be grabbing hold of the inner leg, pushing out through the heel or pointing the toes. And then I'm going to slowly turn the toes forward as I drop the leg all the way down and let the toes tap the floor down at the end of the mat. The leg is long now. My bottom leg is still bent. And I'm just going to lift and lower this top leg a few times. I don't want to go very high at first. I want to keep it kind of low so I can get this really nice stretch across the hip there. And my foot is pretty flat. The sole of the foot parallel to that bottom end of the mat, short edge down there. I like to keep my hand on my hip, kind of give my hip a little extra massage, my waist right around the waistband. You can feel the core engaging here. And I'm not going to tell you when to stop. I'm going to stop eventually, But I want you to tune into your leg, your hip, everything here. And when you get tired, just restack that knee and go back into resting position. If you want to get creative, feel free to lift the leg higher a couple of times. Notice the turning of the foot. Kind of leaving this as an open-ended asana. So it ends when you decide it ends. Couple more deep breaths. And we are going to head toward rolling onto our bellies. If you haven't had enough time resting, take a few more breaths for yourself, and then stretching the legs out, roll onto your tummy. And just take a moment here, kind of situating yourself on the floor as you rock your hips a little bit. I want to put my elbows really far forward, but slightly bent so I can keep my shoulders and my head up a little bit. Deep breaths. I'm going to bring the palms of my hands together, walk the elbows toward each other, and start to bring the thumbs toward the crown of my head. And this should be a little stretch in the shoulders here. Not too much. You can kind of play with it. The closer you walk your elbows together, the deeper the stretch across the shoulders, under the arms. You can kind of play there a little bit. I'm still rocking my heels. You can be still. It's all good. We're just going to take 2 more breaths. Good. And then relaxing down, turning your cheek to one side. Let's bend the knees, keeping the thighs on the floor. The feet just float up in the air. We're just going to roll the feet side to side, maybe crisscross the ankles a few times. This helps with flexibility in that low back sacrum area, the tailbone area. Just moving it around a little bit. Anytime we move, we help add to the range of motion. Before we roll back onto our side, we want to do one deep stretching, strengthening pose called locust. Lots of different ways to do this. My favorite way is to put my knuckles down beside me, palms face up. My legs kind of zip up together, my toes are pointing, my head and shoulders start to rise, and my feet and legs rise up. You can squeeze those glutes. You can keep your knuckles on the floor, or you can float your arms and hands up to about the level of your back as you breathe and stretch out through the tips of your toes. You can feel how hard it is to breathe here. When it gets too hard to breathe, it's time to come down. Just enjoy the strengthening of this pose. Trusting yourself to know when it's time to relax. And roll gently back onto your side again. Bending those knees. Give that low back a little rounding here. And I'm going to slowly push myself up just this high, just with the fingertips pointing toward the top of my mat. My knees are still pointing off the side edge. So this is a little bit of a twist. Just taking a minute here, maybe even rocking the shoulders a little. I'm going to take my hands slowly behind me, rock the knees up, and walk the feet to the other side so that I can lie down again on this other side. Reaching out through the arm, finding a comfortable position for the knees. Good. Long, deep breaths here. Enjoying how you feel. Can you tell that one side of your body feels different from the other? Sometimes I can tell. We begin here by drawing the knee into the chest and rolling the ankle out a little bit. One direction and then the other. It's fun. You can kind of feel the movement of the muscles in the shin as you roll the ankle there. Yep. Anytime we can kind of sense the movement of our body, like touch it or feel it, is an important way to grow our perception of ourself. I'm going to take one more deep breath here. And then maybe begin to rock the knee down and up a few times. It does not have to go very high to be moving in the socket. That bottom leg's doing its work. Very nice. And then I'm going to begin to stretch the leg out long. Maybe roll the ankle a little bit, and then lowering the leg down to the floor, maybe tap the toe. And then lift and lower as long as you feel good here, until you start to get tired. It's time for another open-ended question. I like this one. What would happen during the best day that you can imagine? Feel free to put your hand on your hip. Just feel that movement. Feel free to get creative. And when you get tired, honor that and take your rest. And we are going to slowly roll back onto our bellies, down at this other end of the mat, rolling onto the tummy, situating yourself there, rocking those hips a little bit. If you'd like to do a little half bow pose, what I like to do is come up onto my elbows, and then I take my right hand and I'm going to cross it over toward my left elbow, and my left hand's going to walk back as I start to bend that left knee. So I'm trying to look back at my left foot here. I feel supported by this right elbow. Maybe it's walked farther forward here. Now, if this feels like enough for you, then I want you to stay right here. Do not keep pushing yourself. If you're interested, you could reach back for foot, toes, ankle. You can use a strap. You can grab your pants. And then you'll want to slowly realign your shoulders, bringing your chest back to the floor, rolling the hips down onto the mat, looking forward, stretching that quad. If you've decided to stay in the twist for a couple more breaths, feel free. You can always roll back onto your mat and then point those toes toward the back of your head. You get a very good stretch here, whether you're holding the foot or not. Just take a few more breaths. Feel free to come out of this pose when you need to. There's a lot going on in that quad that's touching the floor here, that front of your thigh. Finding your rest when it feels good to you. Feel free to rock the hips a little. In your mind, kind of mentally set up for the other side, and then go ahead and take those movements. Bringing the left hand parallel to the front of the short edge of the mat there. Other hand comes in, we look over, and maybe reach back. And then roll forward again on the mat. And my hand is on the inside of my foot here. That opens my shoulder a little bit more. Some people prefer to grab the outside of the foot. It really is up to you in your practice what feels right. Of course, if you don't want to grab the foot or it feels like it's too far away, don't worry about that. You can even bring both hands forward again and just point the toes toward the back of your head and stretch. And remember to breathe. Coming out and back into your relaxation when you feel ready. And to come up from our belly, I'd like to try to cue this. What I'd like to do is curl the toes under, walk the elbows in and right up under my ribs. And what happens is I start to dig my knees into the floor, kind of crawl my knees forward a tiny bit, and my hips get higher and higher. And then I just push up, no rounding in the spine. And my elbows are pretty close together here. You can walk the knees a little further apart, and I'm just gonna rock a little bit. So I'm slowly transitioning from the belly. Just letting myself enjoy each minute position along the way. Enjoying the journey. You can walk the knees a little closer in. Now, if your knees are okay with a deep child's pose here on your knees, then feel free to widen them even further apart out toward the edges of the mat, big toes together, and sit on your heels. But if your knees would prefer it, please stay with the hips over the knees, maybe even step up into your table pose right away, or come off your knees and find a seated position where you can just roll around and move your spine in a way that feels good to you. Stretching through the ribs. If you're down in your child's pose, you might walk your hands off to one side and stretch a little more there. And then to the other side. We're just taking a slow transition into our knee position here. And then gently begin to crawl your knees forward so that you can sit down on the floor. But I never sit flat on the floor. I always sit on something. So I'm gonna grab my blanket. I wanna encourage you to stack up pillows. I think I've told you guys that my husband sits up on like 5 blankets, and that's the only way that his hips will open up so where he feels comfortable. So give yourself 5 blankets. That's a nice place to be. And we're just gonna start by rolling the shoulders back and squeezing those shoulder blades together, maybe even reaching back with the arms. Really open up the heart, open up the throat here. Take big breaths. Use your nose if you can. You don't have to sit crisscross either. You could have one leg in, one leg out. Most important thing is to have that spine long. And we're just arching the back. One more big breath. And then bring the hands around. Pull your spine back to neutral and give yourself a hug. We need more hugs. Maybe even rub the sides of your shoulders. Rub your back a little bit. Good. Take the arms straight up in the air, roll out those wrists. Try to remember which arm you just had on top. Take the arms out wide, point the fingertips down, palms facing out. Feel that stretch through the inner arm here. Tip those fingertips down, good. One more big breath here. And then give yourself a hug with the other arm on top and just do the little rub side to side, good. All right, just shake that out. I want to go ahead and find our way up to standing. So if that means that we're going to come back to knees, that's fine. If you'd like to come up from a squatting position, that's fine too. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to rock up onto the balls of my feet. I like to stretch the calf muscles here, but if it's not, this is really hard on the knees, a squatting is, so you can probably just stand yourself up, take your time, coming up into a nice standing tall position. And we're gonna grab our straps today to open our shoulders a little bit. So as you come up, kind of reposition everything. Get your straps, swing those hips a few times, see how they feel. We're gonna do a little side stretching with our strap, so we'll get there. I'm gonna start to slide my hands wide on the strap and bring them right up to shoulder height and just kind of test your shoulders a little bit. I'm just bouncing the strap a little. If one of your shoulders is not happy here, then I don't want you to use a strap. I want you to have no strap and just do everything we're doing with one arm. Slowly get a little higher and a little higher and higher until the strap is at the point where your shoulders have stopped. And that might be much farther forward for some people and much farther back for others. Okay, so once we've found this high position, I'm gonna step my feet a little wider than my hips. Tiny little bend in the knees so they don't lock up. I'm gonna squeeze my strap with my fists and start to tip to one side. Pull the belly in and reach up. Keep breathing, it's hard to breathe here. And slowly move to the other side, good. And then right back up to center. All right. Now you're gonna wanna slide your hands wider and wider apart on this strap until it probably bumps into your head. That's perfect. And then start to let the hands go behind you. Only if you can. Keep going wider and wider with your hands until your arms let you go behind you. And then kind of find that spot where it's kind of sticky or kind of actually more slippery, where it's kind of sliding back and forth. And I just wanna hang out here. We're stretching the front of our shoulders, just a couple of breaths. When you feel like that's enough, go ahead and roll the hands down behind you, let them just sag, let the strap slide down and kind of swing your hands a little bit. Make sure you feel okay. Let's take one little supported forward fold here, stretching out through the tailbone, up through the crown of the head, little bend in the knees or a bigger bend, good. And then we'll take the strap back over. So as you stand up, reach out behind you, keep the hands wide apart on the strap as you slowly begin to lift it up. Nice and long, good. You can graze the top of your head with the strap and then let it slowly come forward. I'm gonna leave it right here at the shoulder level and start to shorten my distance between my hands, right at shoulder level, right? Now, we're just strengthening our shoulders here. kind of adjust in the shoulders till you feel good. And we're gonna twist a little bit to one side, and you can let the heel come up if you need to. Pay attention to those knees. If you need the knees to stay forward, then you're only gonna twist slightly in the shoulders. Yeah, twists can be interesting for knees, so don't go too far. You should feel that stretch in the shoulder though, all the way back to center, and let the hands come down. Good. I am gonna throw my strap over my right shoulder and come up to the top of my mat. Find my mountain pose, nice and tall, and slowly stepping back with my right foot. Drop the heel down. I have my feet on different tracks on the mat here, like I'm wearing skis. You might even heel toe the front foot over slightly. Bending into the front knee, warrior one. You can tip your heart forward a little bit, stretching back through the calf. Oh, it feels so good. And then I want to move into a shoulder position here where I take my right hand up in the air and place the palm down and grab the top of the strap. And then the left hand reaches back behind me and I grab the bottom of the strap. And I start to walk the hands together if I want to. So this is a real heart opener as we're in our warrior one, right? You can keep leaning forward for as long as you like, or you can start to bring your heart, your shoulders up for a slight back bend. Deep breaths here, lifting the heart. Keep the low belly drawn in. And slowly release the arms. Let them come back down and step yourself forward and just kind of swing the legs a little bit. March. Good. And I'm going to walk to the other side of the mat as I take my strap on my left shoulder. Of course, you don't have to use the strap. You could just do your cow's head arms without the strap. I'm going to find mountain pose, take a breath nice and tall, and then lean into my right foot, step back with my left. And I have a wall right next to me, so if you feel a little wobbly today, please grab a chair or go stand by something you feel comfortable with. Bend into the front knee, begin to tip forward from the hips, and we'll move into our arm position. We lift the left hand, grab the top of the strap, reach behind with the right hand, grab the bottom of the strap. You don't have to walk the hands together. They can be wide apart, or you can walk them along the strap a little tighter. Keep breathing, keep leaning forward as long as you like, feeling that back of the legs stretch, pressing into the soles of your feet, or you can rise up into the back bend, low belly drawn in nice and tight. And gently let go of the strap. Good. And I'd like to go ahead and step forward and swing those hips as we turn sideways on our mat and step the feet wider and wider apart, coming into our wide angle pose. Kind of feel in the hips. You want to make sure you have a little bit of movement in the hips, not too much, not too little, that middle way. Take a couple more deep breaths. I'm going to take the strap in front of me again with my hands a little wider apart than my shoulders. And the strap's about at the level of my chest. And then with a little tiny bend in the knees, I never want to lock up that knee joint. I'm going to slowly send my tailbone back and reach forward with my arms, pull the belly in. And you might not go very far. This is a lot of work on your core, on your low back. Go only as far forward as it works for you. This is not a competition. In fact, here's our next open-ended question. What is your happy place like? Whenever you feel like you're tired out here, I'm just gonna lower my hands down, maybe take them to my thighs. Let my low back relax a little more. You can bring your head toward the floor, you can touch the ground. Enjoy leaning into a little more relaxed wide angle pose. Some people like to bend one knee, straighten out the other leg a couple times. If your knees like it better to just be still in the middle, then just stay right there and take 3 more deep breaths. as you are ready to slowly lift up, engage your core, take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, rise all the way up. Bring the strap with you. And we're gonna turn I think those are your right toes out to the side. We're gonna move into a warrior two here. The back foot is parallel to the short end, the front foot turning out, the heel of that front foot in line or about in line with the back arch. Bend into the knee, make sure you can still see your big toes. Lift the strap forward, so it's along that long edge of your mat, and then see about how high you want to take it up in the air. Press down into the soles of your feet, keep your front knee bent, your back leg long, and keep breathing. You can always rock a little bit side to side if you want to add that in here. Be gentle. That's a lot of core work, a lot of shoulder work. Let's slowly lower the hands behind us and let the strap come down on our neck like a scarf, and just let the arms come down. So we're wearing our strap scarf here. We're going to start to straighten that knee, turn the toes forward, and then turn the other toes out. If you would like to step your feet together and take a quick break in the middle, feel free to do that. And then you'll slowly move into that warrior two again, bending into this other knee. Some people like to kick that back heel out a little more. This kind of releases this front hip. Don't go past your ankle on that front knee there. Try to see those toes. And then we're gonna reach for the strap. Now it's behind us, remember, we want it to come behind us. Nice and wide with the hands apart on the strap. Deep breaths. And you can slowly lift it up. Maybe the strap kind of rests on the top of your head, that's fine. Right there, you could maybe pull your hands in a little closer. See how that feels. Keep breathing and pushing into the soles of your feet, pulling in on that low belly. Breathing. Feel how strong you are. And then slowly bring the hands forward, letting the strap roll forward and down as we release it, and start to straighten the knee, turn the toe forward. And I'm gonna heel toe 1 foot at a time. Move a heel and a toe, and then heel and a toe. Really slowly coming up to my mountain pose, or I'm gonna swing those hips. Nice. Kind of bump the sides of your mat with your hips. Feels pretty good. And I'm finished with my strap for now. I'm just gonna lay it down so I can reach it if I need it when I get to my back. I'm gonna turn sideways on the mat, move into my chair pose. A little bit of a supported forward fold at first, or a supported chair, a little more of a bend in the knees. Remember, this is enough of a bend right here. This is a great chair pose. If you want to keep going, if your knees feel like they like it, you can keep deepening your hips, kind of sitting down in a chair here. Feel free to straighten up and sink down a few times. You could also alternatively have your knees just slightly bent, elbows on your thighs, taking your forward fold. That might be easier on the knees, even easier on the low back. We're gonna take our time. Let's just think about the movement. First, I wanna take my hands forward and then step my feet back and choose between a down dog and a table pose and then a child's pose. So kind of think about what you're gonna do, and then begin to move in that direction. Hands come to the mat, deep bend in those knees. Maybe you need to bring the knees right down on the floor. Maybe you need to lift the hips. Take deep breaths. Feel free to take cat-cows. Swing the ribs. Just enjoy the journey. Also, remember, if you prefer not to be on your knees for your child's pose, I want to just encourage you to find a seat on the floor, maybe roll back onto your spine and pull the knees into your chest. Just going to take a few more breaths as we relax, as we come down. Here's another open-ended question. What makes you who you are? Keep breathing deeply as you slowly find your way into a seated position again. I want to remind you, you can use that blanket or block underneath you. And I'm going to bring both feet to the floor and then walk the feet off to one side. And one foot's going to kind of tuck under as the knees drop forward. And we'll take a really nice gentle seated twist to start out here. Sometimes I like to rock the hip a little. I definitely am up on a blanket here. And sometimes I have more support under one hip than the other, a little higher. Nice tall spine, roll your shoulders a few times. You can rock your neck, don't go too hard. And I'm just gonna take both of my hands and set them down on the side away from my feet. And I'm not gonna pull, I'm not gonna stretch, I'm not even gonna lift up in my heart. I'm just gonna stay really soft in this twist. And breathe. At first my head is probably just facing forward, and then I might choose to move my neck looking over one shoulder, and then nice and slow over the other one. Really gentle twist. Unwinding, just, coming back to that center point, I'm going to take this leg that's kind of underneath and open it a little wider. Now, if you'd prefer not to have your knees bent, you can be in a wide angle seated position here, or you could have the knees bent with the feet on the floor kind of wide. I'm going to move into kind of a sloppy pigeon. So my knees are pretty bent. I'm going to take both hands on either side of the knee pointing away from my feet. And I'll just hang out here for a moment, and I might start to walk my hands forward. I do like to use a block under my head. Have something to put my forehead on. You can feel free to come all the way forward. If you feel like that's rounding and pulling your low back too much, then stay up a little higher. We're deepening that stretch on the hip that we're sitting on. Of course, you can go all the way into a deep pigeon here. You could stretch the back leg way back behind you, roll onto the front of your knee, come up onto the shin of that front leg. Lots of options here for your pigeon, and I just want to take 3 more breaths. Leading with the back of your head as you gently rise up. Take the hands behind you. Lean way back as you use your core to lift your legs and maybe just kind of kick them a little bit. Feel free to straighten the knees, swing those hips as we slowly move into the other side. The feet come to the floor, scoot the hips a little as the knees drop over. One foot's tucked under. And I do like to have the legs pointing forward here. And I'm sitting on that blanket. See how your hips are feeling, rock a little, good. And we're moving into that really soft twist. Just gently away from the feet, letting the shoulders and the neck and the chest soften. Even looking downward, maybe closing the eyes. Turning forward and thinking about moving into that sloppy pigeon, opening this bottom foot up a little wider, this leg, leaning toward that knee. Remember, if your knees prefer to have your legs wide, then you're just going to be turning like this. So you still feel like you're getting a little bit of a twist. Your knees could be bent, the heels on the floor. And this is just a really nice way to just keep those knees nice and sound. Either way, you're doing yoga. Keep breathing and enjoying the stretch. Bringing your head up. We're going to lift the legs, turn sideways on our mat. Reach for your block. And as you lay back, let your body slowly soften, knees bend. If it feels good, you can have the legs stretched out. Take some deep breaths right into the center of your chest. Feel free to add the rocking of your knees side to side. I want to move into a little supported bridge pose here. So I'm going to plant my feet, maybe walk them in a little further so I can get them under me so I can lift my hips and slide the block up under here. Now, of course, you don't have to start this way. I'm actually going to give you the option to stay up off the block for a few deep breaths and then lower down. So putting the block there doesn't necessarily keep you from doing some work this morning. So here I want to just rest for a moment or two as I find a good position on the block. I really like that tailbone to be pretty much centered on the block here so that the block itself doesn't touch any of this lower lumbar spine under here at all. Good. Now you can simply take the hands down beside you, tuck those shoulder blades in, push into the floor, squeeze the glutes and slightly lift off of the block. You can stay on the block, or you could even, for those of us who feel adventurous at this point in the practice, you could take one ankle across to the other thigh, kind of center the foot that's still on the mat, and lift the hips with the ankle crossed. I can hardly do it with my left hip. I can do it a lot better with my right. This is a lot of work here at the end. You can use your arms to help press into the mat. Whatever you've chosen to do, feel free to come in and out of that shape at will. If you've done one side, you might want to switch to the other. We're all going to just take one more really full breath with the block engaged here in this pose. And then we'll lift slightly to get that block out from under. Just set it to the side. Let your hips touch the floor and rock a little bit again. We're going to roll over for our final twist. We're going to roll over onto one side, stack the knees, and we're just going to do our shoulder opening twist. So I take the hand to the hip, the elbow's up in the air, and my elbow is going to point back behind me, and I might just stay right here. Still kind of stacked. I might keep going, laying my shoulders down, letting my top knee rise up, maybe even sliding a block between the knees as I take 3 deep breaths in the twist. And to come out of the shape, I'm just going to rock my knees up. And then maybe I'll scoot myself over. This little scooting action uses all the beautiful muscles of our core as we roll onto the other side for our final twist. Hand to the hip. Maybe your head is on a block or your arm. Point the elbow back. Maybe stop right there. Maybe keep going. Slide a block between the legs, shoulders to the floor. 3 deep breaths. Rolling the knees up, letting the shoulders stay on the floor as you arrange yourself for your Shavasana. And you might just lay with your back on the floor, knees bent, legs stretched out, legs up the wall. You know all those beautiful options that you can enjoy as you do nothing at all. Really deep breaths as you settle into your resting pose. I want to add a little sound to the end of our practice. So I'm going to get out my Shruti box. I want to encourage you to just hum and get some vibration going in your throat and in your chest. It's a very simple way to continue to move the body into that rest and restore state out of stress. so that we can heal and get stronger. We're just gonna do some ohms together, or you can just listen. Deep, long breaths in through your nose and out the nose a few times until you're ready to exhale through your mouth. Maybe begin to move your fingers a little bit, roll the wrists a little bit. Just go really slowly, moving from stillness into the movements of our life again. And here's our final open-ended question today. What do you think about yoga? And what do you think about your body because of yoga? May we all find the space to ask open-ended questions without judgment or expectation. Thank you all so much. Namaste.